In a world constantly in motion, where skies tell stories untold. One channel has the eyes to see beyond the visible. Welcome to Werx. Join us as we track and analyze the movements that shape our reality. From geopolitical shifts to the silent ops that never make the news. Dive deep into this unique perspective where we decode the signals above and reveal the stories they hide. Be part of a community that values truth and transparency, where every flight tells a story. Subscribe and join the mission. Stay aware, stay prepared, and stay vigilant with Werx.
All right. Hey, welcome, folks. It's going to be your sit rep. It's 12/19/2024, and we're coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. And so today, you know what? We're going to be talking more about the drone stuff because there is further information coming to light, not about New Jersey, but around our military installations. People are starting to speak up. And so we're seeing a lot of efforts to see and get eyes on what's happening around our military installations. That's a little bit concerning. And then, of course, we've got all kinds of other things happening. There's big moves. We are seeing a significant uptick in troop movement into Europe, not just the Middle East. Middle East seems to be just getting peppered a little here and there, but it's going into Europe. That's a little concerning, especially because it's going to a lot of our bases that are forward operating bases up near Ukraine. That tells me that somebody's prepared to basically put us at a war front with Russia. And I'll show you the stuff going into RZE Poland, which is very close to the Ukraine borders. We always talk about that. And then just a bunch of other things happening around in terms of movement militarily. Geopolitically, we seem to be setting ourselves up for a confrontation. I see a little bit with China. I think China may be a threat. We got a lot of troops in Asia. So, but I think the main thing is going to be this Syria is going to be a hotbed. I think we have just established, the U.S. allowed it, and we're behind it, a very tyrannical, terroristic organization. They called themselves, I think it was the Syrian Al-Qaeda is the name that they have given themselves or have been dubbed. Not by the United States, but by people in the region. And so we're seeing that these folks are definitely trying to push Sharia law, and they are just creating havoc throughout Syria. And I think that was the plan all along, right? People go into panic. The last time that happened, we saw mass exodus in terms of immigration in and out of Europe into the United States, which has continued on. We're also going to talk about some numbers of the illegals that we have to get out of these sanctuary cities. It's sickening. So, all right. Well, let's do this. Let's start off over here in, actually, that we'll be talking about in just a minute. But let's start off over here in Skyglass. I'm looking at about 302 on the screen. And now, keep in mind, I've already stripped out the trainers. So I've got Tex 2s, T-38s, all the EC 3545s, the Hawks. Those are out of it, and so we're still sitting at 302. If I plugged all of those back in, we'd be almost near 500. But the things that catch my eye, let's just kind of go over here. We got H60s. You can see those are kind of spread out, very right side of the United States centric, 30 of those roughly. And then let me see what our air refuelers are doing here. We've got 27 KC-135s. Our baseline, just on average, is 25. So just this particular air refueler by itself is at 27. If I plug in the 767-200, or I guess they call it the C-46, it's the Pegasus. If I plug that in, we are talking on screen 41. So you can see pretty active. Look at this activity off the left coast here. That's one we got to keep an eye on around the Gulf, up and down the eastern seaboard, and then just over the United States in general. Remember, too, just one of these KC-135s has the ability to fuel roughly 30 F-16s. and that's if they were very low on fuel. If they're just top offs, man, they can probably do more than that. Probably closer to 40 if I had to guess. But this it's a data point for you. All right, lots of air refuelers up. That's an indicator of fighters up. Now the other thing too, I do want to point this out. These are 767s. And if you'll notice, it's all Air Transport International, Omni, Airborne Express. That's all one big conglomerate as a cargo charter carrier. They do a lot of moving illegals, move a lot of DOD assets, etc. Usually not tied to equipment, but usually tied to troop movements. But the reason this is interesting, the reason I point this out is because these are flying under a military transponder squawk. Okay, so when I show you what's on screen, it's all military-only aircraft, right? I'm not tracking commercial traffic. But, I mean, if we were to look at commercial traffic, you're talking 45,000 flights per day, and that's only moving 2.9 million people. That's per day, but that's everything, right? And it would just be total chaos. The screen is just blue all the way across because that's the color of the aircraft icons for the commercial side of the house. So, and you can see blues out here. I mean, we've got Habal and some of the others. So, but these are military squawking. All right. So let's just kind of get into what we got on screen. We'll start off in our watch list. And so you can see, again, the yellow circles are visibility circles. That is anybody that is in that range can see that above their head if stationary. And then that's how far they can see from up at that altitude. So I got a little B-52 out off the southern Louisiana side. A lot of Glex. Those Glex are going to be intel birds, all right? And you can see Phoenix Air. Let's see, what else do we have here? I see some Western Globals and quite a few. I mean, it's pretty active over the U.S., but the yellow rings give you just an indicator of the intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance that is up. A couple R-135s seem to be coming back. We got an E-3 Sentry. Those are intel balloons. We'll talk a little about that one too, because we did have a new one just launch and go out to the East Coast. Actually, it wasn't new. It was already in my database, but it's pretty interesting. And then we've got this, that's a little Q9, right? That's over Japan doing a little drone activity. And that right there, that's just a troop mover for the Russians, right? It's just like our camber flights where they have their own transportation command. And that just happens to be an Airbus, but that's what they do. Nothing over Australia. Okay, let's talk intelligence. We'll start off over Asia. Notice out near Okinawa, and then doing a lot of work over South Korea. And then this down in Perth, you can see that's a U.S. asset that actually came in and is doing some intel gathering. Remember Five Eyes, right? We spy on each other, and then we share that information. That's what's going on there. And then, of course, you can see north of Libya. We're going to talk a little bit about that because that's one of our news items today. There's definitely some interesting data going on there from the Ruski perspective. And then just notice out over the danger area we typically see in Southern California, out over the Pacific towards Baja. But then this, all the Glex flights coming out of El Paso, notice where they're looking. It's all around this mountain range. All right. Okay. And then here's your drones, which is very bizarre. I got 0 over Japan, other than the live one we just looked at from a Q9 perspective. Nothing over Australia, nothing over Europe. You talk about bizarre, but then you see some stuff coming out of Malta. I got little low altitude stuff over the Mediterranean. And then we have stuff that looks to be headed out towards Syria, down towards the Red Sea. You can see some stuff there around the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. You see one that left D.C. that looked to be going across the drink. So we're adding another asset to that. This calibration flight, and then this stuff here, Southern California, Los Angeles, etc. And then you see this little broken, it just kind of goes out over those mountains that we've been talking about. But you can see it is looking very closely at our northern border there south of Winnipeg. All right, now let's go over to R135s. Notice you got one coming out of Okinawa headed up towards Japan out over the sea there. And let's get us over to the United States. You can see, again, looking at that, this is kind of the edge of that mountain range there. Right? SIG intelligence is what we're looking at. Okay, these are flight traces for R135s. And then you see this one that just kind of it's a broken trace, goes out over, looks to be towards Poland. All right, we're seeing a lot of the broken trace stuff, a lot of it. All right, and then I see a little blip right there, kind of in between Persian Gulf, Gulf of Oman, right there. So again, SIG Intel, of course, that one also went dark. And then let's talk AWACS. Now, the AWACS piece, notice I also have mixed into that, you see it broken trace headed towards Okinawa. Look at this. This is bizarre. I don't think I've ever checked Australia and not seen any type of AWACS activity. Now, keep in mind, too, this is not only the E3s, it's the E7, which is a new one with that surfboard over the top. And then we've got some E2 Hawkeyes that we added to our quiver. A lot of those, actually. That's a smaller platform, does the same stuff, just flies off carrier decks. That round circle over the North Sea, broken traces. But the round circle, they're looking at ship traffic, probably gathering, if I had to guess, the little man in the middle, gathering cell traffic too from those ships. And then you see some low altitude stuff off of the northeastern coastline up near Norfolk. Southern border, out along the edge of California. Right? Now, that edge of California becomes very important because if we start to look at the air refuelers, first we'll start off in Asia. Look at the amount. I don't think I've ever seen this before. These are marshaling patterns. This is where fighters come in, they get fuel, and they go back out. It's completely surrounding Japan. Very unusual. Don't see that very often. Very active, all right? From a fighter perspective, more than likely is what they are supporting. You get over to the Middle East, I see some stuff broken out towards, headed kind of near Somalia, maybe Djibouti in that general area, over the Red Sea. You see broken traces out of Kuwait. And then those marshalling patterns kind of along the forward flank, headed into Europe. And then look at the United States. That's insane. 3 days of air refueling. Look at the left coast, California. Look how many fighters and probably reconnaissance aircraft are off our west coast and off our east coast, for that matter, off or over the Gulf of Mexico. Very, very active. Now, if you look at C-17 transports, notice the flights leaving and then broken traces coming out of South Korea. And then you can see some headed down to Malaysia. A lot of broken traces. Look at all these broken traces right here coming out of Australia. All broken. Like, where are they headed? Different directions. Somewhere out here. Okay. And then let's go over here to Europe and the Middle East. Kind of thick trace lines, right? It has been every time. In fact, our last sit rep, we had a lot of heavy traces into Germany. Look at the amount of traffic and flows in and out of the Middle East, all the way around Syria, going in and out of Bahrain, Egypt, kind of flying across and around the Horn there towards Morocco, into Egypt as well. Then, of course, you see some traces here, but notice the movement between Central California up to Washington, and then all of this activity here. The other big takeaway, we got a lot of movement from all of the logistics hubs in the United States, right? Charleston, the one out in Texas near Lubbock. Now, look at the broken trace headed to, that's their bug out location, all right? Broken trace into Africa, all right? Don't see where it goes. Down towards South America, broken. All right, and then you can see the amount going across the drink. Okay. All right, let's do this. We'll get into the stories. I'm going to show you what I have based on the same data. I'm going to kick up our screen to the left. This right here is one of the ones that we'll be talking about. Notice it is NA. That's going to be a Intel balloon. It's at 80,000 feet. Looks to be, let me see. I'm going to hit it on the database side. Let's see if it gives me anything. It's 11 miles away from, it looks like Michelin. No, that can't be right. That's grabbing the wrong data. There we go. Yeah, so this at 80,000 feet, it is 96 miles south-southeast. And why are you doing this to me? 1 mile south-southeast of Sandston, Virginia. And I don't know why my mouse must have touched something. So I'm sitting there trying to give you coordinates on or at least altitude and location. And it just didn't want to, well, I was doing it wrong. So, okay. Let's move on from that. Let's get over to the story. But this right here, this is the one, since we're talking balloons, high altitude unmanned balloon passes near DC. Well, I just showed you that one sitting at 80,000 feet, about a mile south-southeast of Virginia. It is Raven Aerostar. Yeah, we've been tracking these all along. In fact, on this, if I get into my watch list, that actually, let me do this. I'll take it down and show you from a watch list perspective, Intel balloons. I've got 57 that I track now. And how many do you see up? Well, just a handful, right? Maybe 11. So this and the 11 would include over in Europe, et cetera. They're all over the place. They're up. They don't move. So if I tried to show you the trace lines for the balloons, take a look at this. The only one that you will see is the one that just moved that we just talked about. That's 80,000 feet over DC. Okay. That's the only one you see because the other ones aren't moving. They're stationary. And so they just stay. You can't see the blips as much as you want to. Even the German ones, you can't see them because they're not moving, right? The things that I show you from a historical perspective is because there are trace lines. And so when they move, you get to see the trace. So these are stationary. They're all sitting in their remote locations, and a lot of them are offline where we can't even see them. All right. So that gives you kind of a lay of the land in terms of balloons, et cetera. Now, let's get into some of these stories. Now, this one here, Spec Ops leaders are basically an alarming level of collaboration from our adversaries. It's not where you think, okay, well, maybe, it's the Ruskies or the Chinese, et cetera. Yeah, they're in that mix. But what they're talking about are the others, right? Including terrorists, all right, and terrorist organizations. So this is your big takeaway from this article right here. SOF troops, that's Special Operation Force troops, have recently increased work in the competition and crisis phases that often precede an armed conflict. That is, right there is your big key takeaway right here. What they're seeing often precedes an armed conflict. So get ready, because I'm going to show you the base activity, the amount of flights that are leaving, and you can see we're ramping up, all right? Okay, now we talked a little bit about drones in the last couple sit reps, mostly focused on New Jersey, but then we had, an arrest that took place in California, et cetera. But now a lot of the base commanders are starting to kind of speak up. All right. And so look at this. It says multiple drone incursions confirmed over Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton. And so they're saying it's the first time that the Marines have actually acknowledged this is happening. But you can see, imagine the intelligence that a foreign adversary could grab if they were doing this, right? How many aircraft are there? What's the base activity? Are we seeing large deployments? It's kind of like the stuff that I can see. I mean, it's open source. This wouldn't be, right? This is actually flying over a space you're not supposed to. But this is where it gets really interesting. We've talked about the fact that the Chinese have been buying up farmland. They've been buying up food processing centers. They're basically buying up areas around our bases. Why we are selling our land to the Chinese is beyond me. That is treasonous. But check this out. It says drones spotted near at least 17 military bases that are located next to Chinese-owned land in the U.S. Del Rio is a perfect example of that. The Chinese own, I don't know how many acres. It's supposed to be a wind farm. But this is where they set up shop. And then they come in and with their drones and start kind of eyeballing our stuff. One of the things I did not get into the other day, and it kind of ties to this Chinese thing, was that I was reading an article and I meant to show it and I didn't. And I rather than go back and find it right now, I'll just talk to it. But evidently, the DoD has been exporting Chinese out of the country, large flights, 747s. They fill them up, and I think they've done 2 or 3 of those so far, of people that they basically said we're not here for good intentions. They put them on a flight and they flew them out of the country. Now, the interesting thing is they're doing that to the Chinese, but they're not doing it to the Middle Easterners, who I think are probably just as big a threat domestically from a terrorist perspective. Okay. Now, let's continue on here. But look at this. Almost 8 million illegal aliens live in American sanctuary cities. This is based on the latest report. 8 million sanctuary cities. Remember, there are a lot of the mayors, a lot of governors, et cetera, that are basically saying, you're safe here. And they won't allow the military and police force to deport them, or they're saying they won't. But of course, this new appointee over the immigration stuff has basically said, if you get in our way, we're going to arrest you along with them. So it is treason. You can't protect an illegal. You just can't deem it sanctuary city stuff. This is ridiculous. But let's just throw some numbers out there for a minute. 8 million illegals in just sanctuary cities alone. That doesn't include all the others that are out here, probably closer to 25 million throughout the United States. But look at this, 8 million, all right? If you were to try to get rid of them all, put them on airplanes and fly them out of the country, and let's just grab one particular equipment type, which would be, say, a 767, okay? That's a wide body, has a pretty large seating profile. It would take you 30 to 40,000 flights on 767s to get them all, just the 8 million out of our country. All right. Now you run into an issue because and that's a ballpark number, just based on seating configurations, right? And not all of them are the same. Some hold more than others, but there's only 400 767s total in the United States that are operating in the United States. All right. 400. And, that, if you needed 30 to 40,000 flights and you only had, and that's of a wide body. Yeah. It's going to take a while, right? 30 to 40,000 flights, even though we have 45,000 flights a day inside the United States. Many of those are small. That includes military flights as well. But you're only talking 2.9 million people on average in the United States are being moved via aircraft. All right, 2.9 million in one day, 45,000 flights. So you could basically take every asset that every airline has inside the United States in one day to move all of these folks. And even that would only get you to 2.9 million, even though the number of flights is big, but the aircraft are small. So you can see it's quite a complex issue to get these folks out of our country. That's only the sanctuary cities. One, you got to hunt them down. Two, you got to detain them. And then you got to get them on planes to get them out. This is going to be a very long process. The current administration knows that, and that's why they are accelerating people into our country. And let me just show you. Let's go over here to the transports. This is just Omni, okay? Notice they're rolling in and out of Japan. They're headed down to Southeast Asia. Don't see them out there very often. This is probably troop-related here. Then you get over here to Europe. Some of this is going to be troop related, and you can see some of these are kind of heavy traces around Denmark and southern Sweden, kind of getting into the mix of things. Notice that they're thick into Ramstein and then thick over to the Middle East. Now, I've shown you the Omni flights where they come out, they go to JFK, and they're taking straight up illegals. That's a full flight of illegals coming into our country and then given, basically money and housing and jobs and all the other stuff. Notice the one that goes in and out of Bahrain. But then look at the United States. Look at the amount of movement here. Now, remember, I showed you that's tied to Air Transport International, just a bunch of different ones, but and including Omni. But notice the border states, and then notice the flow into Central America and South America. They are flying down. They're paid for by NGOs and by our government. They pick them up and they fly them into Miami, and then they process them to various areas throughout our country. That is just Omni. That's just 3 days. All right. Now, not all of that was illegals, but the stuff going down to Central America is 100% illegals. Now, you go look at Global X, and they're also in on the mix. And oh, by the way, Swift Air, the aircraft from Swift Air that are operated by Eastern Airlines, they are also now starting to get active with the same stuff. I'll start grabbing those as well. But you can see down to Central America, from our borders up to DC side of the house into here. I mean, it's just sickening, right? Makes you sick. All right. So you can just, imagine how long this is going to take trying to get them out of our country. I've shown you the flights coming into our country, and we've been tracking that for 2 years to get us to where we are today. So you've got at least 2 years worth, probably more, getting them out. And oh, by the way, the current administration is accelerating getting them into our country right now. They're doing all they can to bring them in via flight, via across the border, via bus, train, whatever they can do to bring us down, to tie the hands of Trump as he's going to be so busy, focused on trying to get rid of this and getting a border wall up. All right. Okay, let's move on to this. Did you hear about the bill? Hey, this is why Mike Johnson needs to get his walking papers, as well as every other lawmaker. When you hear them talking about pushing funding and spending bills through our government, what that is, you got to just read between the lines here. This is taxing you additional monies. So when they come out and they go, oh, it's a $300 billion bill to keep the government funded. Reword that. It's a $300 billion tax bill that hasn't been paid for yet. And it's in the future. And so every time they pass anything spending wise, they are basically just further taxing us. Okay. It's not based on money that they already have. It's based on future money and taxes they're going to use collecting it from us. All right. Now, this is where this gets sickening. And this is why these folks need to, every single one of them, with the exception of maybe a handful, need to be marched out, kicked out. They need their retirement funds and all their pensions and everything that they have taken from us. It just needs to be stripped away. All right. They need to take it from them because these people are traitors and they need to be tried for treason because of the stuff that they're doing to our country. Let me just tell you a little bit about what was in this bill. 1,500 pages. All right. $60 billion was slated to go to Ukraine. Right. And then there was a bunch of unconstitutional force of courts to protect people in Congress. So when Trump comes in and tries to hold them accountable for what we just discussed, they're trying to put in plays to block that. All right. They also have past and future immunity for these deep state thugs. Okay. People that we know are part of the deep state. They're trying to put in immunity for them so they can't be prosecuted for what they have done in the past or in the future, right? Let that sink in. And then, of course, there's all kinds of unconstitutional emergency powers. There are even mask and vaccine mandates that we're trying to be stuffed into this. Gain of function research. We heard all about that during COVID. Yep, they're pushing it again, probably tied to bird flu. And then all these vaccine passports, as well as the funding of 12 additional biolabs. Yeah, let that all sink in. This is the stuff that they were trying to get in there before Trump got in. And it looks like maybe it's been blocked. Hey, here's the other thing, too. They tried to give themselves a $70,000 inflation raise. All right, increase their pay $70,000 for inflation. When they are the very ones that caused the inflation. Yeah, that was also blocked. But yeah, this is your government at work, and we are on the cusp of getting all of this front and center when Trump comes into office. All right, let's talk about NOTAMs. Now, take a look at, you can see a lot of the normal stuff we do see. It is a little closer to the shoreline than what we have seen in the past. Just a big takeaway here is look at the slop coming into the United States. This is more atmospheric river. High turbulence is what you're seeing here, but a lot of weather coming in. All right. Let's talk about troop movement. We got a lot of stuff on the move. Look at the amount of flights coming in. These are your Glexes. These are intel flights, third-party intel, by the way. But that's you got this coming in from home base operations. You've got a BBQ. That's Eastern Air Express. That right there is one of the old Swift Air flights coming back. Coming from Rogue Valley International. It's Medford, Oregon, and a spa flight. That's a deadhead. This is a deadhead. All right. And then you've got Allegiant Air coming in from Cincinnati. Now, they come in, but where do they go from here? Right? You've got a National Cargo headed to Los Angeles. That's a 747. More than likely, that's going to be taking things, putting it on ships, sending it to Taiwan, more than likely, or South Korea. And then we go here, this one. This is the Eastern Air. All right. Bedford, Massachusetts. This one's going to McGuire, Fort Dix. This one's going to Dobbins, Marietta. We've seen that a couple times now. And then this one's headed also to Fort Dix. Okay. These are small body aircraft, except for this one here, which is a large one, but very active, to say the least. Especially you get into the arrivals and you can just see the board. All the different aircraft type coming in to Biggs Army Airfield. That's a big indicator of one of two things. We're either pushing a lot of illegals to these other destinations, but given the fact that they seem to be going to military installations, makes me think that we have a lot of troops being activated and deployed. All right. All right. And then the Camber flights. Seeing a huge uptick in Camber. This is U.S. Transportation Command, but 777s. These, when you see 777s, notice Barksdale Air Force Base. That's where it's leaving from. That's taking folks probably out to where the B-52s are now stationed. And these are just, aircraft mechanics, crew chiefs, whatever, getting on these, maybe even some additional flight crews headed outbound. Don't know where that one's going. This one's coming out of Kuwait, but the 777s are more than likely troops. I don't know about this one, but that one's headed back to England out of the Middle East. But if you look on the map, you can really see the locations that these things are in and out of. All right. Then we talk the Brits. Now, they were racked and stacked, hot and heavy coming out of Cyprus and Malta, all right, headed to the Middle East. That's at 41,000 feet. Back it up just a little, but it has cycled since. We probably had about 8 to 10 total before they cycled through. Now you've got reach flights rolling in. This is going to be Ramstein, C-17. This is probably Dub 98, C-130. I don't know who this is. Air support from France. All right, so you got the French arriving. And then that's the Omni flight. I remember I told you that Omni is taking Middle Easterners, bringing them into New York, and then they get processed and rehomed into our communities. They do that several times a week. And then we go over here, RZE Poland, and this is your forward operating base in up against Ukraine. It's in Poland, but we just kind of go through. You got Atlas Air arriving. We go further down. You have German Air Force arriving. Let me just see camber flight. So U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Command. 4 747s coming in. All right. Now, they could be doing a lot of different things. Remember, we just got some funding that was turned on, so they may be delivering product, but I can guarantee you we've got a lot of troops that have been arriving into the board. We go into the arrivals, and I just kind of go back to it's the last 2 weeks. Okay. And let's just start here. Oh, go down to the bottom of the board. I want to go through it. And you can see that right there. Actually, camber flight, camber flight, camber flight. Let's just go up the board. Again, U.S. Transportation Command, Atlas Air. We keep going. Another camber flight. 2 more cambers. Well, that's a Navy Logistics. Let me keep going. Another camber flight. Camber, camber, camber. You see this, all right? You see the trend? Not all of these are wide or large, like 747s bringing equipment. German Air Force, Atlas Air. All right, these with Atlas Air, it could be anything, but notice they're coming out of MacDill. They're coming out from all around the U.S. and coming in. That's what makes me think when I see the flights coming out of Biggs, going to these military bases, and then they're being processed, and then I think they're getting put onto these other flights going into RZE. Remember, Putin said in our last sit rep that he saw a significant uptick in NATO manpower going in, soldiers adding, boots on the ground, not in Ukraine, but just all over Europe. All right, so there seems to be a significant uptick here. Swedish Parliament approves a total defense bill. All right, now we go down here and look at the numbers for this: 170 billion, so $16.4 billion US. So you got the Swedes just got into NATO and just put in a massive defense bill. Same thing with Germany. Germany approves a record 20 billion euros worth of defense gear. So you're seeing the NATO countries starting to step this up in terms of what they're spending, probably due to pressure that Trump is going to levy on them, because when he was in before, he said, U.S. is paying for everything. You guys need to start contributing. I see maybe the United States pulling back from NATO significantly under Trump, which is a good thing. All right. Let the Europeans take care of the European side of the house. All right. We don't need to be out there doing it for everybody. All right. We need to focus on America. Okay. On our own country and getting rid of the virus that is embedded in it. Okay. Okay. Now this is Constanta. This is that port. It's if you back this up, you can see it's on the Black Sea. But this is a location. It is a very large military base. It's very close to Crimea. It is probably closer than RZE Poland in terms of proximity to the war in Ukraine. Now, all of these hazes, these are going to be H-60s, right? A lot of these are H-60s. And then you can kind of see very active, very busy. I see base commanders leaving, and I see a lot of C-130s. I see this Brio 66, that CL-60, that's a military asset. That is also intelligence gathering in the region. So Constanta is super active. Okay, look at this. Satellite imagery shows a ramp up in Russian forces massing at bases in Syria for withdrawal. I don't buy it, but I guess they're trying to protect some of their equipment. They're trying to get it out of the region. It's the only thing I can think of, because they probably think this is all going to go hot and they don't want it to get into the wrong hands. So they're flying their IL-76s in. They're picking them up. You can see, you get down to some of the base pictures. There you go, little IL-76 rolling in. And they're notably grabbing S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. Super lethal, but it, doesn't affect us as much, or Israel, because they basically fly a lot of stealth aircraft, right? Or we do. All right. Keep going. Russia airlifting those air defenses we just talked about. They're taking them from Syria to Libya, right? Benghazi, to be specific, to be precise, right? And that is because the United States, we bailed out of Benghazi. You may remember the whole Hillary thing, and a lot of people died. Made a movie about it, all right? But we vacated Benghazi, and Russia came in and basically filled the gap. So All right, eyes on that. That's a big move for them to put those into that area of the Persian Gulf, because if you get in to, let me just take you up here on a map real fast and back it up, right? And you go down here, you start talking about Libya and Benghazi in particular. That right there, this is the Mediterranean. And so you start putting missile defense systems in here. They already have them, but you start adding to that. Anything that's flying out here is within reach, up to 65,000 feet. Okay, so to have those stationed here, that is a huge threat to our military. All right, huge threat. And yeah, you can thank the State Department for letting that whole thing implode and the Russians coming in and taking it over. So, all right, well, listen, that's going to do it for our sit rep today. Hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Eyes on this, because I do feel like our deep state is going to do everything they can before Trump gets in to get us into a war footing in Ukraine, in Syria. I don't know about, the Taiwan piece. I think if China was going to make a move, they'd definitely do it before Trump gets in. But I think maybe they're a little scared of Trump, and so they may not be thinking about doing it now. So we'll continue to watch it, but boy, you talk about the immigration aspect, you talk about war footing, and Trump is going to be on his heels just trying to undo what these devious, demonic-inspired thugs running our country have put us into. So, all right, you guys be safe. Keep that powder dry, and we'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.